Hello and welcome back to another episode of Triathlon BC's Free Speed Series. I'm provincial coach Kelly Guest, and what we're going to look at in this episode is getting the wheels on and off your bike as quickly and as efficiently as possible. There's a practical side of this, and there's a speed side of this, a race side of this. So the practical side is obviously, if you've got to take the wheels off your bike to get it in or out of the car, or you're cleaning your bike and you're going to take the wheels off and then put them back on, it's best to know how to do that efficiently and safely so that the wheels are back in properly. The race side of it is in draft legal racings, there is the wheel stop. So if you do flat and you have a spare set of wheels or there's team wheels in that wheel stop, you can ride up, do a quick change of the wheels, and then get riding again, knowing your wheels are in safe and you've done it as efficiently as possible. Hopefully you never have to be in that scenario because you check the tires regularly and you're always riding with really good tires in really good condition. So if you do though run into this situation, or even just as I say in the practical sense of taking them on and off to go in the car, there's that too. So if I'm in a race scenario, and I'm going to start with the front wheel here. Actually, I'm going to dial back here. This is referred to as the non-drive side of the bike. This is the drive side of the bike. This is the drive side because it's got the chain and the cassette and all the driving side items. This non-drive side of the bike, this is where we dismount to. We always want to dismount on the non-drive side of the bike because there's fewer sharp pointy bits on the non-drive side, so it makes it a little bit safer. As well, when we're setting up the wheels, we've got the spoons. So if you're old school like me and you still ride with quick release as opposed to threaded through axles, you're gonna wanna put the spoons on the non-drive side of the bike, both front and rear. So you can see here, I've got my front skewer on the non-drive side of the bike. Now, I've also have not lined it up against the frame. Sometimes people will line it up against the frame, but then it's really hard to get your fingers in there to open it properly. And sometimes if you line it up against the frame, you can't actually get the skewer to close quite all the way. So I have them off the frame and they're on the non-drive side. That's also too, when I get off, I always know they're there. I always know they're right there and I'm not wondering which side of the bike they're on, okay? So I'm gonna start with the front wheel here. So I'm riding along, I get a flat, my front wheel. The wheel stops just up ahead and I know I can get there safely with this front flat and I've got a set of wheels. So I ride up and I safely get the bike slowed down, dismount, and then I'm dismounted onto the non-drive side of the bike. I reach down and I flip this little tab on my brakes. So it's a little tab right up here in the corner, and that just opens the brakes up a little bit more, so it makes it easier to get my wheel out. Then I can spin around. Now, most forks that have quick release skewers will have little tabs just underneath. And those tabs are to help keep the wheel in should the skewer ever open up. So remember that when you're taking the wheel out, you not only have to flip the skewer open, but you're gonna have to give it a few spins to loosen up that skewer so that the wheel will pop out. Take the wheel out, put the new wheel back in, tighten it up, close the spoon, flip your brake lever down, and off you go again. Okay, so that's something to practice. I've seen a lot of athletes trying to switch the front wheel and not unscrewing the skewer enough, and then they're jamming against those little tabs and losing time and being inefficient. So I'm gonna leave the wheel out right now because we're gonna go back to that in a minute. We're gonna address the rear wheel. So the rear wheel is a little different. Obviously, there's a lot more going on back here. We've got the derailleur, the chain, the whole drivetrain here, and that makes it a little harder to switch the rear wheel. So a trick to doing that is shifting down into the hardest gear in the cassette which is the smallest ring closest to the frame. What this will do is it'll move the derailleur over and create wider space for you to get the wheel in and out. Okay, so it'll look a lot like this. Again, I'm riding along in the race. I notice I get a rear flat. The wheel stops up ahead. I know I can get there safely with this rear tire losing air or on the rim if worst case scenario. As I get close to the wheel stop, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, as I'm pedaling, shift down into my hardest gear, okay? So I'm gonna make sure I'm in my hardest gear in the cassette. So I may want to have pre-shifted the front chainring into the small ring so it'll be easier to re-accelerate, okay? So now I've got this going, I'm slowing the bike down, I safely dismount, okay? And then when I jump off the bike, again, I flip that little tab to open my brakes up, I pull the spoon of the skewer, and then I can pretty much drop the wheel out. Okay, pretty simple. So what I'm going to do now is, as I've got that wheel out, I'm just going to take my bike off the stand here and show you a couple quick examples of what I mean here. So if you can see here, I've got it shifted into the hardest gear in my cassette, which creates a really nice wide space here to get the wheel back in. If I don't do that step and I've got my derailleur still in an easy position on the cassette, now when I go to put that wheel in, I'm gonna run into a lot of stuff and I run the risk of damaging my derailleur or bending the derailleur hanger or even just wasting time, okay? So I wanna make sure that I've done that step to shift it into the hardest gear before I take the wheel out. Then as I remove the wheel, it's gonna be a lot easier to get the wheel back in. So again, with any piece of trying to create free speed, we have to practice this because the practice of it will allow you to be more efficient at it and really go on autopilot when you do it. Doing it one time is a little slower, is a lot faster than doing it a lot of times really fast and not getting it done. So, and we've all been there. In a moment of panic, we try really quickly and we end up going slower. Take a breath, do it once and get it done. So it'll kind of look like this. So I've taken my wheel out and I'm about to put I've got my new wheel. Obviously I have my front in. I'm gonna just line it up here quickly on the cassette, just like that. I'm gonna press it down, make sure it's well seated into the frame. So I'm pushing down, just give it a little push to make sure it's not gonna go anywhere. I can close that, make sure that my wheels, I spin my wheel once just to make sure it's not rubbing on the brakes and I'm gone. Pretty simple, okay? Again, this is super useful when you're taking the wheels off to put them in the car or what have you. Always start with your front wheel. When you're taking your wheels off to get it into the car or when you're taking your bike out to put the wheels back on, start with the front wheel. You open it up, you take this out, and now the bike will sit like this on its own. We don't have to hold on to it necessarily. So it allows us a lot of ability to then set up and take out this rear wheel. If we do it the opposite way around, in order to, we risk putting the derailleur on the ground and possibly damaging it or you know, putting the chain in the dirt or anything like that. And if you've spent a lot of time cleaning your bike, like we've talked about earlier, you don't want to do that. You want to keep your bike clean, you want to keep it fast, and we want to keep it protected in good working order. So when you go to put the wheels back on, put the rear wheel on first, okay? Once I've got that rear wheel on, then I can just hold the stem here, roll in this front wheel, lean over the bars. This putting a little weight on the bars will just allow you to make sure that that front wheel is in correctly. And then I'm just going to close up the wheel like that. do my brake, lift it up, spin, just to make sure my brake's not touching, and I'm ready to go again. So again, every time you change the wheel or take the wheel out and put the wheel back in, before you go, give it a little spin. Take a look, make sure it's not rubbing. You could have a super, super fast wheel change and then take off, but if you've banged your brakes and they're rubbing on the rim, all that speed that you just got for free is gone because you're rubbing on the brakes. So take the extra second, spin the wheel, it's good, now go after it. All right, practice, practice, practice. Till next time, see you later.